Do you want to make so big breakthrough in your sobriety that the benefits of quitting alcohol is just the beginning? See, quitting alcohol is just the surface scratch of this process, and the benefits of that are just the beginning. Have you ever heard the concept of the domino effect? It's about finding the one thing in your life that will produce the domino effect in your life. And when you change that one thing, it will change your life so fundamentally that you don't even believe that you are living the same life. And that's, my friend, the goal of this video. So first, I want to talk about the wisdom of Einstein. Einstein understood very clearly the power of the domino effect. In one of his quotes, he said that if he would have an hour to solve a problem, he would use 55 minutes to think about the problem and 5 minutes to think about a solution. That's when the magic happens. When you spend more time to identifying what is the real problem, then you start to make a real progress in your sobriety. I have formula how you can do this identification process, and this formula has 8 different steps, and I will walk you through these 8 different steps. And in the same time, I give an example my own identification process so you can have better pictures how this identification process goes. So the first step is to understand your drinking profile. Maybe we all drink alcohol, but the reasons why we drink can be different. And when you understand your drinking profile, it gives you a direction where you have to go or what you have to look for. So, are you a person who drinks on the social situations? Then maybe you are a social drinker. Or are you a person who drinks on the weekends? Then maybe you are the weekend drinker. Or are you a person who drinks when you face stressful situations? Then you are the stressed drinker. And basically in these 3 profiles, the problem is kind of same because it's about psychological dependence. You think that when you drink you are better socializer, or you think that alcohol reduces your stress, or you think that the way to keep fun is to drink alcohol. So it's about psychological dependence. And the last profile is alcohol addiction. This is not about psychological dependence, but addiction basically fulfills some psychological need in your life that you normally lack. And the way to identify addiction is that if you use alcohol or drinking to escape from your reality and you can't handle your reality without alcohol, then it's a big sign that you have alcohol addiction. So when you understand your profile, it gives you the direction where you have to go. My profile was addiction, and then I started to read about addiction, and I understood very clearly that one of the main drivers of addiction is trauma. So that's the next step. You have to understand what is the main driver of your drinking profile. And then I started to read more about trauma, and I understood that trauma is not external event, but it's internal wound as a result what happened in your external life. And trauma is not always some horrible event that happened to you, but it can be also that you didn't experience enough good things in your life. So as a human beings, we have some basic needs that we need, and if those needs was not met, then that itself can be traumatic. And now I understand more about trauma, and I understand what I have to look for in my own situation. And the next step is to understand the cause of the main driver. So I had to look about my own life events, and then I understood that I experienced in my childhood very cold relationships with my parents, and then I kind of felt like that I lacked love in my childhood. So my some basic need was not met in my childhood, and that was basically the trauma. After you know that the cause of the main driver, then you have to understand the cause of the cause. So this is a little bit complex to explain, but I can give you example how you can better understand it. So now I understand that lack of love is the cause of the main driver, the trauma. Then I have my own interpretation of the event. So the lack of love meant that I'm not lovable, and that's the cause of the cause. This life event is not even the trauma, but it's the interpretation that makes the trauma, because it's the internal wound and not the external event that makes the trauma. And then now we have the interpretation, I'm not lovable, and this is really big because now it's basically your identity, and it's very strong belief that you are not lovable, and now it starts to direct your life in certain directions. So then we have to start to study the consequences of the trauma. So the first consequence is distorted worldview, which means that I am unworthy. And when you have that kind of worldview, you don't have, many choices available to you in that situations. And it's no wonder that your life starts to direct in a direction of the addiction. And then the second consequence is distorted thinking. If you have a belief that you are unworthy, then the thoughts of I'm failure, I can't succeed, start to become very habitual thoughts of your life. And then the third consequence is distorted state of being. And this is the moment when basically your trauma materializes. Because now the interpretation I'm not lovable, becomes in your body. Because now it's the feeling. You feel shame about it. And when you start to feel habitually the shame, then some point it will materialize. And it means that basically one of the ways how it can materialize is addictions. So there's many ways how it can materialize. But understand when the interpretation becomes emotion, it's the moment when it will materialize. And the last is the main problem. The main problem is the hyper alert nervous system. And your nervous system basically operates constantly in the fight or flight mode. And in that kind of situation, it's not really quality life if you are constantly in the fight or flight mode. And the addiction starts to become natural outcome of that. And now you have to understand what can make the biggest differences in your life. And I will say, if you understand the cause of the cause and you handle this interpretation and maybe reframe it, your interpretation, then you can ease your nervous system. So it's about understanding what is the main problem and understanding what can make the biggest difference in solving your main problem. And in this case, it's the changing and reframing your interpretation. And that's how basically you can identify your real problem and even solve it. And also little note that there can be many drivers that, for example, drives addictions. For example, low self-esteem drives addiction, shame, unconsciousness, and directionless makes the environment of the addiction. So these are basically the roots of addiction, and when you cut all of the roots, you kill the addiction. So first, focus on the main driver, the trauma, and 10 others. And maybe you don't have all of these drivers, but look at your own life and watch how these different drivers plays out in your own life, and do the same process of every driver. That's how basically you can kill the addiction permanently. And then the next step is to build system that solves the problem. And this is not complicated, it's very straightforward. First, you should use your environment as a system to solve the particular problem. And you should design your environment in a way that you understand the basic principles of the problem, and then you start to design your environment based on those principles. For example, I understood that one of the most effective ways to overcome and heal the trauma is to become okay with the emotions that trauma produce in your current life. So then I started to meditate, because when you meditate, you learn to sit with your emotions. I started to journal, because when you write about your experiences, you write about your emotions, then you have more clarity in your life, and it's way easier to face those emotions. And then you can have some habits that supports this process. It can be like you exercise. When you exercise, your body is strong, and then your mind is also strong. And when you eat healthy, you have strong relationships. You educate yourself and you read about more this problem, and then you can do better choices in your situations. Then it starts to be way easier to overcome this problem. So that's the first step. Design your environment in a way that it supports in the process of overcoming the problem. And then do some research how people have been overcoming this particular problem, and then start to test those different methods. So I learned that IFS is very well known to be really effective cure for overcoming addictions. And IFS stands for Internal Family System, and it's a therapy model. And I was in the 4 IFS sessions, and I made a huge progress in my addiction work. And it's maybe one of the reasons why nowadays I can enjoy the natural sobriety, and I have no need for alcohol anymore in my life, because IFS, it solved the trauma, and now there is no need for any more to drinking. So that's one way how you can basically build a system that can solve the problem. So there are many ways how you can do it, but this is maybe really simple way to do it. And yeah, that's basically it is. Identification process, and then just build systems that solve the problem. So if you really do this process successfully, you can make so big changes in your life that it will almost feel like that you live life with a new character. And I hope that this can help you to identify your real problem in your life, and you can break free from your addiction. So thank you for watching this video, and bye bye.